everybody. Today I'm going to talk about vintage razors. It's not like I don't talk about vintage razors, but during the period of time that I've looked at the Aristocrat, I've looked at the Super Speed, Black Beauty, then I went off into the modern venture with the Future, and during that period of time it started off when I got the Aristocrat. I started looking at the history of the Aristocrat, and one thing struck me. There were some British razors and one US made razor during the 1940s to 60 era, mostly kind of in the 50s, that was called the Aristocrat Junior. That intrigued me. Why did they call it the Aristocrat Junior? And I started looking. Well, there's the Millard, M-I-L-O-R-D razor, which is kind of a gold colored version of the 40s style Super Speed. Now this is a 1946-47, I think it's probably 1947 Super Speed. That's what I'm going to shave with today. I've got a Wilkinson sword stainless blade, and you notice that the notch, if the camera's picking that up, is what differentiates the later 40s style Super Speed, which is like this, versus the earlier one, which is this one, and it has the little, I'm not sure what to call it. It doesn't have a pronounced notch, but it's got two little tabs that come out on the side that the blade slips over. That was 46-47. Now the Aristocrat razor was made in 1941. They started then producing it again in 1946 after the war. And that's when they started producing these razors. Well, the Aristocrat, as you noticed from other videos, more ornate handle, usually in gold or rhodium, sometimes silver or nickel. But the head of the Aristocrat and the 40s era Super Speed, I think they're identical. So there was one American version that in the packaging they called an Aristocrat Junior. Now the British made, they had an Aristocrat Junior that looked, there was one gold, they had made one in gold, but then they had other ones in silver, and then some of them had the kind of diamond plate down here in the bottom, and then others had more of what in the British style razors have more of the bottom that looks like a Super Speed adjustable. It's kind of the flat, and that made the head a little bit heavier. And a lot of people believe that the Super Speeds, they're called rockets, and then in the British made razors, when you twist it, this slides down, there's a gap. There's a screw mechanism. I don't know if you can see that. This part right here opens up and there's a gap. And then some of them have a gap up here. Okay, vintage razors. Why do we like them? Yeah, I started really thinking about that. And one of the things that I realized is that vintage razors are the measuring stick that we compare all other razors with. It's what we judge. When we pull out a modern razor and we look at it and we go, oh, it doesn't compare to a Gillette. No, it's what we measure the quality of a modern razor is by looking back at those vintage razors. And I thought, wow, what was going on? Well, I think the golden era of DE razors and razor blades and all of those things was between 1940 and 1960, 65, 70, somewhere around in there. But basically 1940s, 1960s, the golden era of DE shaving. And I believe that Gillette developed over time and finally came upon the formula of the Aristocrat. Many people say the Aristocrat is the most well-rounded performing razor. Guys that need a more aggressive shave can shave with it and get a fantastic shave. Guys that need a mild shave can shave with it and get a fantastic shave. It just hit on all cylinders and just blasted through everybody else. So this was the pinnacle of design. They went away from the open comb, which, more aggressive, and said, okay, let's bring it down and find that balance. And they found the balance. The basic difference between the Super Speed and the Aristocrat is the Aristocrat's got a little bit more heft. It's heavier because it's got a bigger handle. It's got a more ornate handle. This is sort of a lighter version. This Super Speed is more aggressive than these Super Speeds. This is a 1975 flare tip black handle. This is a very, very, very mild razor. Then they developed in the 50s, 60s, they said, okay, we hit the golden mother lode with the Aristocrat Junior, the Super Speed, the Rocket. Let's divide them up. We're going to make a Super Speed Heavy, red tip, Super Speed Black tip, and they made them in the flare tip, and they made them in the more 40 style Super Speed handles. Black tip and blue tip. Blue tip was light, black tip was medium. Red tip was heavy, more aggressive. So they split them up. More razors, more marketing, more production, all those things. And then, of course, they got into, the adjustables. The Fat Boy, the 190, Black Beauty, the Slim. The adjustables are the best of all worlds. You could have mild, you could have aggressive, you could have moderate, all in the same razor. Marketing. But what is it about a vintage razor? We get to experience the past. One of the things of our ancestors, our fathers, our grandfathers, our uncles, our older brothers, excuse me, the generation that grew up in the Depression, that went to war in World War II in Korea, the generation that sacrificed. They would walk into our shave dens, and there's still some of these folks around, and they'll look and they'll say, why do you need all those razors? You need one, and if you have two, then that's an extravagance. They shave with the same razor every day, day after day after day after day. Utilitarian. Well, we can go back and we can experience what it was like for them. And of course, we got a dozen razors sitting on the shelf or more. And we've got all the different products. They use the same product day after day. But we can imagine that past experience. Another thing is, coming out of World War II, one of the main things that enabled the Allied forces to win was the manufacturing, the being able to get the weapons and the supplies and all the equipment that was needed out, that it was quality, if it was better quality, and it saved lives. So we had this infrastructure coming out of World War II of fantastic quality control manufacturing, and we had all of these guys getting out of the military that needed jobs, so that we started making stuff. We became a consuming culture. That's what drove our economy. But it was quality that mattered. If you didn't produce a quality product, the American public wasn't going to buy it. And one of the things that the British manufacturing of the Gillette razors prided themselves upon was their quality. They wanted to have better quality. And a lot of people believe that the British made Super Speeds, Aristocrats, all of those are better razors, just by the way that they were made and the little variations that they had. So, why do we like vintage razors? I gotta get my soap going here. We like vintage razors because they're consistent, and they're consistent because of the quality of their construction. They're consistent. We pick up a modern razor, sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. Sometimes with this blade they work, sometimes they don't. And many times we pick up a vintage razor, it's going to work pretty much the same way regardless of what blade we throw into it. So it's consistency, it's performance. That performance that we get from a vintage razor, 9 times out of 10 outshines the modern razor, the vintage does. And yeah, a modern razor can last a long time, but you know, these vintage razors have lasted 40, 50, 60, 70, 100 years. They're still going strong, and they're going to still go strong. But you know, if there wasn't those vintage razors sitting around a few years back when we started getting interested in using DE style razors, I don't know if we'd made it. Yeah, there were some modern razor makers that was out there. You know, the big guy, Edwin Yeager, Muley, McClure, and you know, they were making razors, but it was small production in comparison to the mass market that the Gillette razors made. So there was a lot more razors sitting out there in antique shops and thrift stores and people's bathroom cabinets and drawers. And we started pulling out and we started revamping them and refurbishing them and using them. And that was the fuel that spurred the revival in DE wet shaving. And you know, as I've shaved with these Super Speeds, I wouldn't want to live off the difference between the shave I get with a Super Speed and the shave I get with Aristocrat. Very, very close. I think the Aristocrat has an edge. I think they're just a little bit more aggressive. And that's because they're heavier. But the quality of the shave of these vintage razors shines far and above the quality of the shave of most modern razors. Value. We can pick up a vintage razor in good condition for pretty much the same price as a modern razor. Value for our money. And I can pretty well flat guarantee you that this Super Speed that is 60 some years old is going to last another 60 some years longer, probably 100 years longer if taken care of. I don't know about my modern razors, but I can flat guarantee you these are going to last. Beauty. The beauty of these razors, when we get them polished up and looking the way they did when they came off the factory floor, they're just flat beautiful. And then the other factor of why we love vintage razors is that they're simple. The simplicity. The basic techniques of this razor is going to be the same as with another razor. Once you figure out and know how to use one, you can pretty well figure out how to use another. Okay. I'm going to stop it there. One of the things that was going on in the 1940s and 50s, and the reason why I used a Wilkinson sword razor blade today, is that in 1956, Wilkinson in Great Britain created the first stainless steel blade. Now, what did that mean? That meant that the average shaver who was using the Gillette Blue Blade, which is a carbon steel blade, that carbon steel, as soon as you take it out the wrapper and you get some water on it and you use it, it starts deteriorating. And depending on your environmental conditions, sometimes they can rust real fast. You can get a really good edge on a carbon steel blade, but that edge deteriorates fairly quickly. So a lot of guys would do a one-off. They'd shave once, pitch them. Well, once the stainless steel blade came along, then guys were getting a week's shaves. Okay. Then, 5 years later, in 1961, Wilkinson created the first Teflon coated blade and a lot of other coatings, chromium and you name it. They came up with all kinds of recipes. That was called the British process blade, which was putting a coating on it. So what did the coating do? The coating allowed that sharper edge to remain sharper longer. The stainless steel allowed you to get a good, solid, stable edge that wasn't going to deteriorate like a carbon steel blade. But the thing is, you sold less blades because people used them longer. But Wilkinson was able to capture a fairly good portion of Gillette's market. So Gillette then came in and said, okay, we'll get a stainless steel blade. They finally were able to purchase from Wilkinson the rights to the Teflon coating. American Safety Razor, the Personas, got it before Gillette did, and they created the Persona stainless steel blade with the British processed blade, and they created the blades. That's where the ads that I've shown at different times where the guys on the street are saying, yeah, I got 12 shaves, I got 15 shaves, I got 20 shaves, I got 24 shaves, I shaved for a month on a blade. That's because the combination of the stainless steel, the British process coating, that enabled the razors of the time to outperform and step it up a notch. That's why in the 1950s era with the 40 style razors, the 40s to 60s, that style of razor, the Super Speed, the Aristocrat, they were the culmination in the bringing together of so many different factors that the performance, the quality, and the bottom line consistency of getting a good shave day after day, quality and value of your money, the beauty of it, the simplicity of it, all those factors came together, and that's why we like vintage razors, is because particularly in that period of time, and we can get very good shaves from those razors made 100 years ago, but particularly in that period of time, DE razor blades and DE razors got to the top. You couldn't really improve that much on them from that point on. And as a result, that's why they split it out and started making all the different varieties. And pretty much that's why Gillette said, boys, we got to change the game here because we're losing the battle. Persona's kicking our butt with the razor blades. And, we're making a fantastic razor, but that's not our bread and butter. That's not where we're making money. We're making money by selling razor blades. So that's why in the early 1970s, they introduced the Track 2 razor. They introduced their technology to change the game, and they did change the game. We like vintage razors because vintage razors is the best shave that we can get. I know a lot of guys will argue with me that their modern razors perform better than their vintage razors. I can guarantee you they haven't found the right one for them. And probably they haven't really looked at the Aristocrat Super Speed. As I was doing research and I was looking over the internet and looking at comments about the Super Speed razors of the 1940s type and the Aristocrat, more and more comments saying, yeah, if I had one razor that I would keep, that would be it. If I had to get rid of all the rest of them and just live with one razor, that would be it. I've tried all of these other razors, and finally I tried this Super Speed, and it gave me the best shave. This was another one of my prejudices. I had, shaved with this. This was one of my first purchases because I liked the black handle. After I had gotten some 1904 old type version Gillette, and this shave was just so cotton picking mild. I hadn't discovered the Kai blade yet. I didn't like feathers because they felt rough to me, and other blades were sharp, but they just didn't put it up a notch. That made the very mild Super Speeds, which the later Super Speeds are far more milder than the others, the older ones. This one gets close. It bumps it up there, but it's not quite as aggressive as this one. And I need a little bit more aggressive shave. So I had a prejudice against them. They're too mild. Same thing with the Gillette Tex. Yeah, I could get a pretty good shave with a Kai blade, or sometimes with a Chroma Diamant, which is, I think, it's just as sharp as a feather blade. but it just wasn't quite up there. I've changed my mind about what razors I would recommend to a beginning shaver. Yeah, if someone just absolutely has to have a modern razor, if they can't wait, if they got to push the button and pull the trigger to get a razor right now, yeah, get a Wishi, get some cheap modern, maybe get a Edwin Yeager DE89, good razor. But what I recommend that they use as soon as they can, if they can, if they can find a good one, and you can, get one of those 1940 era, 50 era super speeds, 60 era super speeds. That razor will give the consistency and enable them to hone their shaving skills better than any other razor on the market. And of course, these aren't on the market per se. They're being traded and swapped, and it's not like they're making any more of them. They're not. But they made enough of them that there's going to be a supply of them for a long time. And they're still available, and they're still reasonably priced. So if you've been with DE shaving for a while and you haven't gone into vintage razors, I recommend that you do. Oh, excuse me. We got warm weather going on here in Oklahoma and high winds, and it's kicking up all kinds of stuff. If you haven't ventured into vintage razors, go for it. I don't know how many guys I've talked to over the years that have gotten into vintage razor or tried a vintage razor, and they said, man, why did I wait so long? Why did I wait so long to try a vintage razor? It's an experience that you really truly won't understand DE shaving until you have given a good shot at using a vintage razor. Get at least one in your shave den. Yeah, I'm feeding the razor acquisition disorder pretty heavy duty here lately. I've caught the bug a little bit myself. The bug that I had a few years ago, and it died down. But I can't overlook the things that vintage razors bring to the table. As we expand and as the wet shaving community, the DE shavers, the traditional wet shaving world expands, will the modern razor makers be able to reproduce what was going on during the 40s, 50s, 60s? No. The market forces today will say lower quality, beef up production, get more product out on the shelves. Yeah, there's some small, kind of what we call artisan or small shop razor makers that are making very good products, but they're the more expensive razors, and to keep the quality, they just can't turn them out. There's no way. Once you get into a modern manufacturing environment, they can't reproduce what was going on in the Gillette factories in Great Britain and Canada and the United States and other places during the 40s, 50s, 60s. So it's an experience that will never happen again. It will never happen again. We will never have the products that were produced during the 40s, 50s, 60s by Gillette. That's about it. Until next time, have some good shaves. Work hard at being happy. But definitely be safe. Got some interesting surprises down the road, so keep watching. Bye-bye.